Hi everyone, welcome back to Watercolor Wednesday. This is guest artist Kendra Krebs bringing you this really fun nighttime silhouette whimsical project. And the lesson here is the lighter background with the darker foreground, and as you can see, it kind of gives us this little like tunnel visual here. So we're going to learn how to make this. And the stamps that I'm using today, I usually keep it very, very simple, just a few stamps, but I wanted to expand that for this one. So I'm using this tall tree trunk here, and actually it's this one, this tall tree trunk. I'm going to also use this tree here from the Watercolor Tree Set 1. These two little grassy stamps from the Watercolor Foliage Set 3, the two vines here from the Watercolor Foliage Set 4, and if you have either of these, you can exchange out like these grasses instead of these, or these vines instead of these. So if you are a collector, by all means get both. If you have one set and you're really wanting to try this, you can just substitute those stamps. But I am using these two for that. And then I'm also going to use the teeny tiny grass from the foliage set, the original foliage set. And what we're going to do is start with our watercolor paper. As many of you know, I love to kind of tape off the edges. I think it's a really fun way to frame in your work. And then I've also used the Molotow liquid latex pen to put some dots prior to filming, and they are now dry. So if you do this project, make sure that your Molotow is nice and dry before you begin. And I had a couple people ask for dimensions last video. So this one is a little under 2.5 by just right around 3 for this one. And we're gonna start by putting in a horizon line down here. So I'm not gonna go quite an inch, probably 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom tape here. And I'm going to just very lightly draw a line with my pencil. And this will give me a nice horizon line to sort of work from when I do the background trees. And then I also want to take my pencil and just really lightly kind of draw in this little oval just to give myself a shape for my tunnel. And it doesn't have to be exactly like the trees don't have to go exactly around it, but it gives me a nice visual to remember that what I'm creating is sort of this tunnel effect. So I'm going to work sort of around this oval. Make sure that the oval that you draw is really, really light, because we're going to go back and erase that later. Okay. Now we are only going to use 3 colors for this project, and that's going to be N25, which is our black, N89, which is sort of a lighter gray color, and then 526. And I will continue to write the colors on the palette, but it is just going to be 3 colors today. So it's going to be a little bit of a monochromatic. Okay, so we're going to start with the 526, and I'm going to put that right on my palette. I'm going to need a lot of this color. So I'm just going to color it right onto my palette. I'm going to grab my water here and get a good amount there. And I'm going to start pulling that color right off the palette. Actually, I'm going to move my water this way. You just got to move your water to where it's comfortable so that it's not going to drip onto your work. So I'm going to take my blue and I'm going to start in the center. And it doesn't really matter how you add this color. What you want to make sure is to keep the center of this project the lightest. So as you're working out, you want to kind of get darker. This doesn't have to be even, it doesn't have to be perfect, because you're going to have trees coming all around here. But you do want to make sure that you have enough water when you're going in adding that color. If you don't have enough water, you're going to get some streaking. So you probably can see there's the streaking. You will get streaking like that if you don't have enough water. So really make sure you're using enough water to sort of push that color out. And I'm going to continue on here. And as I move out from the center, I'm going to get darker. And I will employ some of the N25, the black, to really darken up those edges. I'm going to keep going around here and just continue to add this. If you're nervous about this, you can try it on another piece of paper before you start your project. While your Molotow is drying, you can go and practice some of this, you know, just practice some different strokes, what's comfortable. In previous videos, I've done something like this where I sort of blob it in and just kind of dab. You can do that. You can do straight strokes. The reason I'm using a straighter stroke is I'm intending to fill the whole thing in with this blue. And then as I work out, I'm getting darker. So because I'm filling the whole thing in, I can use a straight stroke because this edge is going to stop me. It's not going to go too far. So I've got a nice frame here. Okay, so I'm just going to continue to work around here and just darken this up. Notice as the watercolor is drying, I can layer more and more color in because it's dry. If it were wet, the color would just sort of seep out into the water and spread out evenly, not giving us a darker layer. Okay, so now I'm going to take this is the N25, and I'll probably need a good amount of that for this project as well. So I'll go ahead and just give myself some extra. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to mix it with the 526 just off to the side. Add a little bit more water here. And then I'm going to congregate this toward the corners and keep that nice and dark toward the outside corners here. And you can see it's drawing our eye to the center of the image. So I'm going to keep these corners for the whole project. I'm going to keep the corners really dark, nice and dark. And you will see that as we add in our trees and our grass and all of that stuff, you will notice that the corners for the whole project are going to be the darkest of everything. Okay. So I'm not going to worry too much about this. I just want this background color in. And as you can see, all the little Molotow dots, those are going to be our little whimsical fireflies kind of floating around in this forest. So I do want to make sure that it's going to be dark enough, even in the lighter areas, to be able to see those dots when we rub off the latex. Okay, so once that's dry, you can kind of blow on it. You can use a blow dryer. You can just kind of let it be and dry. I think this is pretty dry for me. I didn't use too much water. Yeah, that's okay. So now I'm going to take my tree. So this is the tree I'm going to use. I'm going to scoot this off to the side just a little bit. And I'm going to color this tree with two colors. So I'm going to color it with the N89 first. And I'm not going to color all the branches. It doesn't really matter. I really want the trunk and kind of the shape of this. And then I'm going to go over it with 526 right over the top. This is going to give me a nice background color. And you can see my horizon line. I'm going to focus on sort of staying around that area. And I don't want to come up too high on this image because my closer trees are going to come all the way up here. So really, I'm just kind of creating this background effect using this tree, which is why I kept it in that gray blue, because I don't want it to be the focal point. So I'm going to go back in. You can go either one first. This time I did blue first, but you can do gray first. If you want more blue, do blue first. If you want more gray, actually, it's the opposite. If you want more blue, do blue second. If you want more gray, do gray second. My apologies. Okay, so I'm going to go over that, and it's okay to stamp over twice because I wanted a darker tree in there. And I'm going to blend this out a little bit so you're not even going to see the double stamp. This is going to be kind of foggy in here. And it's really just going to blend in. Okay. So I'm going to pull the lines out just like we normally do with just a little bit of water. And if I want to come back in and just kind of darken up anything just a little bit, I can add some of the 526 or some of the N25. I could even add a little bit of this N89, and it does have a little blue on it, which is fine. But I can add even some of this in here if I want it to be a little bit more foggy looking. So I'm just going to add these in, and then I'm going to take my brush and use a little bit of that N89. If it has a little blue, no worries. I can use more on the palette to get less blue if I want to, but I'm going to take my brush and just kind of lightly freehand some of these little background trees in, and this makes them look really far away, but I'm starting right at the horizon line. I'm not doing anything above the horizon line. That horizon line is where my ground ends. So if I put a tree up here, all of a sudden there's a hill, right? So I want to keep this nice and low, and I want to start building my little trees in here. I don't need very many. I just need a few. Just to kind of give the impression that these are far away. That's what the lightness does. Okay, now I can put in my darker foreground trees, and I'm going to use this trunk to build a larger tree. So this is actually a trunk I have used a lot in the past. And I was kind of playing with it, and I was like, oh, I could actually use this as an outline for a larger tree. So these stamps are so versatile. The more you play with them, the more you kind of discover their potential. You can really do a lot with these. So I'm going to ink this using N25, which is the black. And I'm going to use this right at the edge of the paper. So this trunk right here, or this space between the edge of the paper and this trunk, this is actually going to be one tree, and you're going to see that. And then I'm also going to take this and put in two, just like that. And in between these two trunks, this is going to be one tree. So we're going to make it nice and big, and you will see we can color that in and make it one larger tree. So I'm going to use a lot of the N25 here. Grab your brush, a little bit of water, and we're going to start coloring in. So I'm going to come in here. This can be a little scary at first because you're like, oh no, I'm putting in a big black blob, but don't worry, it will come together in the end when you put all of your foliage and everything in. And this black, it does feel really dark, but I can promise you it will come together when you add in your branches and all of your leaves and your grass and all that good stuff. Okay, so now we're going to branch off. So this does have a little bit of freehand work. You can do it. Challenge yourself. If you want to try it on a different paper first, that's a-okay. But if I could just tell you, trees have so many different shapes, and there's so many different sizes, and you know, they've got branches all over the place. Some of the branches are broken off. You know, it really doesn't matter. So you can just have fun with this and sort of put branches wherever you feel like. It doesn't need to be perfect. You know, perfection is your enemy with watercolor. You really don't want to be perfect. You want to have it be loose. You want it to look like it just sort of happened. It just kind of came together. And for so much of this nature stamping, you know, these landscapes and things, it's actually better just to kind of let your hand go and just start. The best thing to do is just start and practice. And the more you practice, the more comfortable you're going to be kind of making these, you know, images. And then you'll get more and more courageous to try new things. And that's kind of when you start seeing the potential of the stamps, is when you're using them. Okay, so I'm putting a branch here, And I'm gonna put one up here and just kind of let this tree be nice and tall. I'm gonna leave empty spaces because I'm going to put a whole bunch of foliage in here. So I'm not going to overthink this. I'm just gonna put some trunks in, or some branches in, just however I want. Okay. And maybe I'll have a branch or two this way, just kind of lighter like that. All right. So now I'm going to sort of pull this down to sort of blend into the base of the ground. And the reason I do that is because I'm going to put a whole bunch of grass in here that's going to kind of connect it all together. So I don't have to do anything down here. I can really keep that nice and simple down at the bottom and just kind of feather it out a little bit. It doesn't need to be overworked because there's going to be so much grass in here. So don't overthink that. But I would suggest not doing a really harsh line because you will actually see that through the grass when you stamp that down. All right, so let's get into our grass. I'm going to use the teeny tiny grass here, and this is where our oval sort of comes into play, okay? So I know, and like I said before, it doesn't have to be exactly on the oval, but it kind of keeps your mind on the shape that you intended. So because my oval comes down, I actually want my grass to follow that line. Even though the grass isn't right on the pencil line there, it is following the shape. So I'm going to come down and follow that oval. Same thing with this side. I'm going to follow that oval and come down. Over here, I can actually come up because the oval comes up, right? So I'm going to put some of this grass in here. For the corners, I just want this really dark. So I'm just going to put a lot of grass in there. When I add my water, it's going to get dark too. It's going to fill in some of those areas, so I don't have to overthink that. So I'm just going to put this in. For the trees back here, I'm going to use the gray and the existing black that's already on this grass. I'm not going to color the whole grass, just that very top, those very top tips, and just sort of let it kind of be smaller in the background. And just put a little bit of grass back here. Now, once again, you don't have to use the entire stamp. That's the beauty, is you can use just what you need. Okay, now I'm going to grab my taller grass and I'm going to put a few of these in with them angled towards the center. So these little grass, these go opposite ways. So this one, since it's going this way, when I turn it, it's actually going to be coming in to the image. So it's going to be directed inward, which is what I want. I want the eye to continue to come in, which is why I do the darker on the outside and the lighter on the inside. It draws your eye in. So I'll put a couple more of these in, and then I'm going to switch grass. See, it's directed this way when I'm looking at it like this, but when I stamp it down, it's going to be directed in, just like that. And it just draws your eye right in. So important. Okay. Now I'm going to take my vines, and once again, same thing. They're directed opposite of the way that you're looking. So when I stamp them down, these are going to go inward. And I'm going to use the black again with these little vines, and I'm just going to go to town. There is going to be so many of these branches just all over the place, and you just start stamping. You just start going crazy with this because there's going to be a lot of vines getting stamped in. And the fun thing about this is you can use different vines. So maybe you have, you know, some other sets with vines or foliage or anything like that. get them out, have fun with them. You can switch up the vines here. I'm keeping it really simple and just sort of using one vine in each direction. But if you have other vines, if you've got the long vines that kind of come down, how fun would that be? So you can play with those and have all kinds of fun, and maybe have some other trees in the back with different leaves and you know, some different grasses. And this could easily become fall, and you could do, you know, reds and yellows if you want to in the daytime. Just have a blast with this. This is so much fun. This oval and this lesson can easily be used during the daytime if you wanted to do like a yellow sun, and then, you know, as you work out, maybe it becomes more orange, or maybe it's a sunset. However you want to do it, I would love to encourage you to experiment and just see what works for you, what you like. Okay, now I'm going to switch to the other direction, and I'm going to start putting these in the other way for this tree over here. And you can see these trees now are just playing supportive roles in the back. I didn't have to do much to them, which is why I kept them pretty neutral in color. But they are supporting these trees in the foreground quite a bit at this point. Okay, just gonna keep going. And don't be afraid to turn your image. If it's more comfortable for you to stamp, turn it. Do what's comfortable for you. There's no right and wrong way of having your paper. If it's more ergonomic for you to turn it, then by all means turn it. And that's something even I forget about still, is like, oh, my paper moves. Okay, so now I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to just take off that excess water. And I'm going to start pulling now this black color out of the lines of the stamps that I just put in. And do you see the base of these trees? You really can't see when you kind of feathered that out before, right? So don't overthink that. Just sort of feather out a little bit, and then you can always come back in and darken that area with the grass. And then it's pretty much problem solved there. And you don't have to resolve that bottom of the tree at all once you have the grass in. Okay, so I'm going to continue moving along. When I'm using this taping method, and if you watch me, if you've seen my other videos, you know I use this a ton, and I always say go right up to the edge because that's what's going to give you the framed look. So go right up to the edge when you're dabbing this. So we're still keeping a highlight. We're not going to create a solid flat image here. We want to keep our highlights. Always remember that. If you're not sure what that means, I would encourage you to go back to our basics video, check that out. Check out some of the other videos that use the foliage, that use the flowers, and you can see how we're using our highlights and our shadows to create multi-dimensional projects. Definitely go check those out. So I am moving right across here and adding that water, just dabbing as I go. Not too concerned with it being perfect. I just want to get the image to sort of leave the lines a little bit. You just want to blur it out a teeny bit. And I'm going to go back in here with this grass, and that's going to be in that background. And then the horizon line, I'm going to take a little bit of that N89 and the N25, just mix a teeny bit together, and I'm going to resolve that horizon line so that when I erase the pencil line, I have a line here that's going to stand up those trees. If I didn't have a line there, the trees would still feel pretty flat. And it's amazing what the horizon line does to kind of pop them up. Okay. Now, while this whole thing is drying for the most part, I'm going to take a fine tip pen, and it's a really fine tip black, because no tree is perfectly flat, right? Every tree has dimension, and I'm just going to start putting in some dimension into these trees, maybe a big hole here. And I'm just drawing these lines with my black fine tip pen. You can use any fine tip pen that works for you, that's comfortable in your hand. And I'm gonna just start doing these little imperfect lines, maybe a little knot in the wood here. I'm going to come in here and just draw these little lines to break up the perfection in those trees, because I want this to really read as imperfect. And I want them to have shadows and some little notches taken out of the wood, because even though they're black, you're still going to see some detail in there, okay? Now I'm going to, and actually I'll just sign while I'm in here, even though you can't really see this too well. You know, you are my witnesses. I did sign. And sometimes what I'll do if I can't see the signature is I'll actually sign on the front, and then when everything is said and done, I'll sign on the back as well. Okay, so now I'm going to take my pencil eraser, and all of these little blue dots are going to get erased. So what is the biggest thing we want to remember when we're erasing liquid latex off of our paper? Yes, good job. You want to make sure it's dry, right? Broken record over here. You really want to make sure that your image is dry. You will thank me later if you didn't think about it before, because it will rip your paper so fast. And you don't want that. You've worked hard on this. You really want to keep that image nice. You've put, you know, all this time and thought into it, and to have it be not what you intended just because the watercolor wasn't dry, that's really disappointing. So make sure it's nice and dry. And then I'm going to come in with my little micron tip and just put some little dots in here with my black marker, or my black fine tip. Just some stippling in here. This is really fun. These are just little fireflies or whimsical little white dots, and you can kind of decide what those are for yourself. But that is it for that, and I'm going to pull off now the tape, if I can, with these nails. Okay, so I'm going to pull that off, and you see, because I went right to the edge, I'm getting a really nice framed look. Same thing here. This is one of my favorite techniques, is this tape. If you have not tried it, please do. It is so fun. I do it all the time now, and it really helps to frame in my image. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you try it and you love it, let us know. Tag us on Instagram and Facebook. Check out Bonnie Krebs Bible Journaling on Instagram if you're interested in scrapbooking or journaling with our Bible stamps. She's got so many great ideas, so check her out. Also, if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and comment your favorite part below. So thanks for joining, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.